On April 5, 1933, millions of Americans woke up as criminals. With the stroke of a pen, President Franklin Delano Roosevelt had just signed Executive Order 6102, making the private ownership of gold a federal offense. The penalty? Staggering $10,000 fine, equivalent to over $200,000 today, or 10 years in federal prison. Citizens had less than 1 month to surrender their gold to the Federal Reserve, receiving only $20.67 per ounce in return. What followed was one of the most extraordinary episodes in American financial history. A story of power, deception, and the largest peacetime confiscation of private wealth in our nation's history. The year was 1933, and America was drowning. The Great Depression had already claimed over 3,000 banks, taking the life savings of countless Americans with them. Streets were filled with unemployed workers, and panic gripped the nation. But what most Americans didn't realize was that their government was about to implement a plan that had been years in the making. The legal groundwork for this unprecedented seizure actually began during World War I, with the Trading with the Enemy Act of 1917. President Roosevelt, in a masterful display of legal manipulation, would use this wartime emergency measure during peacetime to justify the confiscation of private gold. The government's definition of hoarding was particularly telling. Simply withdrawing gold from what they called customary channels of trade made you a criminal. When the deadline of May 1st arrived, the results were staggering. Over 2,600 metric tons of private gold flowed into Federal Reserve banks. But this was just the beginning. What followed was a series of prosecutions that would shake the nation's faith in financial freedom. Take the case of Frederick Barber Campbell, a story that's largely forgotten today. Campbell had deposited gold at Chase Bank, but refused to surrender it to the government. When he sued Chase Bank to reclaim his gold, he found himself facing federal prosecution instead. The message was clear. Resistance would not be tolerated. Even more dramatic was the case of the Swiss firm Übersee Finanz Corporation, which lost $1.25 million in gold, an astronomical sum for the time. The government's reach extended beyond individual citizens to international entities, demonstrating the true scope of this financial power grab. But perhaps the most shocking aspect of this entire affair was yet to come. On January 30th, 1934, through the Gold Reserve Act, the government suddenly revalued gold to $35 per ounce, a 69% increase. In one calculated move, they had devalued the dollar and generated a $2.8 billion profit for themselves. The same government that had forced citizens to sell their gold at $20.67 an ounce had nearly doubled its value overnight. This wasn't just theft. It was a masterclass in government manipulation of currency. The citizens who had complied with the law lost nearly half their gold's value, while the government reaped the rewards. Even the rare 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle coin became a casualty, with almost all specimens destroyed, making it one of the most valuable coins in existence. Fast forward to today, and we're seeing eerily similar patterns. As governments worldwide push for central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs, we must ask ourselves, could something like Executive Order 6102 happen again? The technology and methods may be different, but the underlying principle remains the same: government control over private wealth. The lesson of 1933 remains painfully relevant. What the government gives, it can also take away. The old adage, if you don't hold it, you do unown it, isn't just a catchy phrase. It's a warning written in the pages of our own history. But the real human drama unfolded in the courtrooms of America. Let me tell you about Frederick Barber Campbell, a story that perfectly captures the government's iron-fisted approach. Picture this. A well-respected Manhattan attorney walks into Chase Bank on a crisp September morning in 1933. He has $160,000 worth of gold stored there, his life savings. The conversation that followed would make history. "I'm here to withdraw my gold," Campbell told the bank manager. The manager, likely sweating under his starched collar, replied, "I'm sorry, Mr. Campbell, but we can't release it. Executive Order 6102 prohibits it." "That's my gold," Campbell insisted. "I deposited it here before any of these orders. You can't simply keep it." But they did keep it. And when Campbell sued Chase Bank, something extraordinary happened. Instead of finding justice in the courts, he found himself facing federal prosecution. The government didn't just defend against his lawsuit. They turned the tables and charged him with hoarding. But Campbell wasn't alone. In a sophisticated sting operation that could have been pulled from a crime novel, the Secret Service orchestrated a series of raids that caught 14 prominent businessmen, including Maurice Anelik and Gus Farber. Their crime? Simply trying to protect their wealth from what they saw as government overreach. Then there's the fascinating case of the Swiss firm Übersee Finanz Corporation. Imagine losing $1.25 million in gold, equivalent to over $25 million today, because you believed international banking laws would protect you. The firm's representatives argued their case all the way to the highest courts. But the message became crystal clear. No one, not even foreign entities, was beyond the reach of Executive Order 6102. But here's where the story takes an even more sinister turn. Everything I've told you so far was just the setup for what might be the greatest financial sleight of hand in American history. Picture yourself as an American citizen who did the right thing. You followed the law. You turned in your gold at $20.67 per ounce. You accepted those paper dollars, trusting your government's word. Then came January 30th, 1934. With the signing of the Gold Reserve Act, FDR and his administration pulled off something truly extraordinary. In a single day, they revalued gold to $35 per ounce. Let that sink in for a moment. The same government that forced you to sell at $20.67 now declared that gold was worth $35, a 69% increase. Let me put this in perspective. Imagine if today's government forced you to sell your house for $300,000. Only to turn around the next day and resell it for $507,000, pocketing the difference. That's essentially what happened with gold in 1934. The numbers were staggering. The government's profit from this manipulation, $2.8 billion. And this was in $1,934. To understand the scale of this profit, consider that the entire federal budget in 1933 was only about $4 billion. In one masterful stroke, they had executed what some historians have called the Great American Gold Heist. This devaluation had another effect that few understood at the time. By decreasing the dollar's value relative to gold, Roosevelt effectively reduced the real value of everyone's debts. It was a massive wealth transfer from savers to debtors, from citizens to government. The most tragic irony. Some of the very people who had patriotically turned in their gold at $20.67, believing they were helping their country during a crisis, would later watch as connected insiders and foreign banks were able to sell their gold at the new $35 price. The system has always seemed to favor those with the right connections. Even the numismatic world wasn't spared. The legendary 1933 St. Gaudens double eagle became a casualty of this period. Almost every specimen was melted down, transforming what would have been merely rare coins into some of the most valuable pieces of metal in existence. The few that survived became the stuff of legend, with one selling at auction for over $7.5 million in 2002. If you want to understand how history shapes our financial future, subscribe to this channel. We dig deep into the hidden stories that the history books often overlook. Because understanding the past might just be our best protection for the future.